I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati.
All right. Happy Thursday, guys. Welcome to Sabs podcast. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. My special guests tonight are the Bronx Anti-War Coalition, and I think Richie just joined us. What's going on, Richie?
Hello, thank you so much for having myself and Gaijin Girl on.
Awesome. So first and foremost, before we dive in, can you tell everyone a little bit about the Bronx Anti-War Coalition? Why did you decide to form and some of the things that you've been working on?
I would say Richie's the one who should take that one.
Sure. So we formed in 2022, shortly after Russia launched their special military operation in Ukraine. A couple of us in the Bronx were disturbed by how uninformed the public was surrounding that conflict. We really wanted to push back on the narrative that Russia invaded Ukraine unprovoked because Putin is some evil dictator. Those of us that have been following this conflict knew that it had been ongoing for 8 years and that the war didn't start in February 22nd, 2022. So we really wanted to educate the community on the truth behind this conflict and how Ukraine was ethnically cleansing the Russian-speaking people of Eastern Ukraine. Believe it or not, I actually met a couple of other Bronx anti-war folks on the way down to a Palestine rally many years ago. And I remember some folks that are not on the call right now, Deborah and Paul, as Gaijin Girl knows. I saw them with a Palestine flag on the train, and we were like, "Hey, you're going to the Palestine rally? You're from the Bronx? Oh, let's stay in touch." So since then, we've all come together and have since shifted our attention over to Palestine solidarity demonstrations. But we've also done some anti-military recruitment work. So we've organized pickets outside of public universities, community colleges, high schools, where military recruiters are preying on Bronx youths. We have successfully. I'm sorry.
AOC.
Yeah, we protested a military recruitment fair that AOC hosted. And we've been very successful. We've actually chased military recruiters out of a school one time. And that's really the type of work that we do. We did a rally against NATO back in October, the first week of October, right, Janet, in New York. We have been educating our community members on what is NATO, why must we oppose NATO, and the interconnectedness between militarism abroad and police violence domestically.
Well said. Yeah, I've seen you guys have been doing great work. You guys make sure you follow them on Twitter, because a lot of the interventions that you've seen me show on this channel, a lot of that has come from the Bronx Anti-War Coalition. So you mentioned Israel. One of the things I wanted to start off discussing, this story from Motaz. Now, if you guys don't know who Motaz is, he's one of the journalists that's in Gaza. Make sure you follow him on Twitter, because he's been reporting a lot of information in reference to the war. Well, Motaz actually points out something in this clip here about Israel targeting journalists. So I want to go ahead and play this and talk about what this means in reference to the greater scope of the war.
So, Israel killed the drone guy, the drone friend. So there will not be any drone shots to show the massive destruction of the main way. المغازل refugee camp, المصدر الزوايدة. I will not be able to show destruction from above because they killed all the journalists that have drones. A lot of my drones, they hacked it as you saw before. So I'm trying to show it with my phone, with my camera, but I'm not able to show how massive this destruction. So as you can see behind the guy who's filming me with the phone now, it's all about destruction. I don't know how it will take them, maybe years to repair this when the war ends. I don't know when it's gonna end. It's been like 102 days. Soon enough, we can't take any more. People are so exhausted, so tired, suffering a lot. Journalists are so tired, everyone is scared. Everyone is worried about his life, about his family life. We are all losers. We lost a lot. We lost our homes, our friends, our families, our life, our work, our future, even the past. Our past, we lost the people we live with. So, as you can see there, different camera here. It's all about destruction.
Yeah, so it's pretty bad. So I don't know if everyone heard, but what Motaz was saying in that video is that Israel has actually now targeted journalists that were actually flying the drones. So a lot of those drone videos that you've been able to see, he was informing you that you won't be able to see that now, which that's important because the drone footage shows the depth of the destruction of Gaza. They're able to capture those images via the drones. But over 100 journalists in Gaza have been killed. Motaz said in that video that he said, we now have no past. We have no present because Israel is basically trying to destroy any and everything. But the specific targeting of the journalists, I want to get your opinion about that, because to me, that basically says that Israel is trying to bury information.
Oh, no doubt. By the way, something came out today that they just blew up at the university. I think it was the Gaza University. Correct me if I'm wrong. They demolished it. It was controlled demolishing. It wasn't even just a strike. And I think one of the things that, I mean, besides the fact that they're targeting journalists at all, I think this proves the lie that they claim that, oh gosh, all of this damage to the civilians, oh, we can't help it. But when they want to target someone, they're really good at it. They can be quite precision, which speaks to exactly what their goal is, which is complete destruction of Gaza and an entire people.
Yeah, Pizza the Hut said the last university in Palestine. Yep. So there's the education, you kill the journalists, you destroy the source of information coming out, the hospitals that have been destroyed. Obviously, that prevents people in Gaza who have been injured from the war from receiving the proper treatment. They're basically trying to destroy any and everything in reference to their culture.
Did you hear about the miscarriages?
I did not.
Yeah, there was a report that just came out that there's about a 300% uptick in miscarriages. So they're trying to destroy. I mean, how can you possibly expect anything else? You know, where they're dealing with completely, no food, no water, disease, stress. They're trying to destroy an entire generation. And that's intentional.
And the liberal feminists in the Democratic Party are silent about this, about the fact that it's majority women and children that are being massacred. And not only are women having miscarriages, but women are not able to access, hygiene products as well. And so you hear, liberal feminists, calling for a universal access to these things here at home, but when it comes to, Palestinians or people that are not white, let's just call it like it is. It's not an issue for them anymore. They don't care.
Right. You would think more like the pro-life people would be upset that life is being destroyed, or particularly the number of children casualties in Gaza. You would think they would be upset if they're really pro-life.
Yeah. And this is the most moral army in the world.
Mm-hmm. Well, one of your politicians, Richie Torres, I know you guys have approached him multiple times. I do want to show this clip as well, because for people who are not aware, Richie Torres takes a lot of money from the Israeli lobby, particularly AIPAC. He's one of the ones that was actually mentioned on MSNBC when they were given a list of those politicians taking that money from AIPAC. I'm still actually surprised that they covered that. But there was this event on Thursday, December 21st, where Richie Torres and Representative Mike Lawler appeared at 92Y to discuss their support for the state of Israel. I want to show part of this as well, because I want people to understand you have to really get a grasp of why our politicians are voting the way that they do when it comes to legislation in Israel, and particularly this war as well. When you see that they are all bought in for Israel, it's because they're taking money from the Israeli lobby. And so I want to show this.
Let's start with you. If one were to move, my name is Foxy, and I am a constituent of District 15. It's clear that there are a lot of bullies who are trying to intimidate us, but we're going to continue our conversation.
So Richie, this is you, correct?
Yes, that's me right there. Yep.
Okay, and I know you were telling him that you're a public school. I'll let it play, but you were telling him that you're a school teacher. Like him, you were also, Latino. And I bring this up because Richie Torres likes to use his identity a lot in reference to his so-called progressivism. So let me finish this real quick.
Hamas is well represented tonight, so
everybody's sitting there smugly applauding themselves for being progressive. What definition of progressive includes murdering children, leaving infants to die in a hospital?
I'm black, I'm Latino, I'm gay, I'm a millennial, I'm progressive and pro-Israel, and I'm pro-Israel not despite my progressive values, but because of those progressive values.
So this is this phrase that we've been bringing up before, progressive except for Palestine. And that's what Richie Torres is. So part of this I blame on Bernie Sanders for allowing the Democratic Party to co-opt the word progressive in the first place. Because I remember when Richie Torres first ran for office, there was a piece written about him in New York Magazine, which says he checks off all the boxes in reference to being progressive. And they mainly listed all the identity factors that Richie Torres has. So this guy was really able to play a lot of people and get the votes and get in. And I sincerely hope when he's up for re-election that people will vote against Richie Torres, considering his loyalty to the state of Israel. This guy is a big sellout. He is completely sold out.
Dual citizen Israeli American and a congressional constituent of Congressman Waller.
So I think certainly
security was incredibly violent. I got horse collared.
I got punched in the ribs at one point.
It's not surprising to me that these are ex-NYPD. They certainly act like it.
This is like a small microcosm of the violence and the violent lengths they will go to protect their image, to protect profit, to protect property, to protect their racist, violent war. And we're not going to stop doing this until the people of Palestine are free.
Yeah, very telling. I want to talk a little bit about that event because I know, if I remember correctly, I think Katie Halper might have been present at this event as well too.
She was. She was one of the last out, so she filmed a lot of it.
Yeah, because it's just, I think for people need to realize, you know, when people like Richie Torres and Mike Lahr host these events, this is when a lot of pressure should be put on people like AOC and Jamal Bowman. They're in this close area. It's not the same district, but they're close by. They should also be at these events confronting people like Richie Torres. I have yet to see them call him out or Mike Lawler out either. They've obviously voiced that they stand in solidarity with the Palestinian people, but this is an event that they should be at. They should be pushing back against someone like Richie Torres. And I don't know if he has a challenger or not, but somebody needs to run against Richie Torres. Hopefully someone who's independent and not a part of either one of these parties, because both of them belong to the Israeli lobby. But it's very telling here. And for those who are not aware, Richie Torres, he has like a big sob story, right? Like he talks about how he grew up with a single mom. He grew up really poor. He said he's Afro-Latino. He's also LGBTQ. Like he talks about everything that he went through and says, look, I made it. Yes, you made it. But Richie Torres is not even representing his own constituents. He doesn't want to talk to them. He tries to avoid them as much as possible. He mainly just got in there to protect the state of Israel, not his district. But go ahead.
You know, one of the things that I personally think is one of the most disgusting things about Richie Torres, I'm Jewish. He constantly uses Jews and Judaism as a shield. He's like, oh, I'm the friend of Jews. I'm like, you know, I'm fighting against anti-Semitism. When you play that video, anyone who watches that video, watch it again and watch him sitting on the stage smirking while his Jewish constituents are being manhandled and pushed down the stairs. And we've been to his office twice now in rallies, actually 3 times, if you include the Flood the Bronx. Yep. And there have been a large Jewish contingent of JVP, Rabbi Weiss, if not now, and he goes on Twitter with blocking half of his constituents and calls us hate mongers.
I didn't even think congressional members were allowed to block people on social media. So I was kind of surprised that he did that. He blocked me too. I pointed out how much money he was taking from AIPAC, and he blocked me as well. So that tells you guys about Richie Torres. But it's not just him. That's the thing. Like he's one of them, but the Israeli lobby has a hold on so many politicians in DC, and this is part of the reason why nothing gets done in reference to holding Israel accountable.
Yeah, 100%. And also on the topic of Richie Torres and his, you know, in the video we saw how he listed out all of his identities. He is making it appear as if as if Israel is everyone's #1 priority in the Bronx. Like, if you talk to everyday people in the Bronx, like, you know, poverty is probably the #1 issue here. And homelessness. As I mentioned, I'm a public school teacher, and every single year we get a report as to how many of our students are housing insecure, and it's been going up since the pandemic, even since before the pandemic. It's been going up every single year. The issue of homelessness is getting worse. It's not getting better. And this is a topic that Richie Torres never discusses. He never discusses, you know, the fact that a lot of people here are unemployed. Our youth have no, public recreation centers to spend to spend time in and to hang out in and to socialize. Our senior citizens also don't have places that they can go to and congregate with people around their own age group. Like, these are things that people want. Our public schools are falling apart. Public schools are and the ones that are left are being shut down and replaced by charter schools, which are backed by private funding. So this is what we care about. This is what Latino people in the Bronx care about. This is what queer people in the Bronx care about. And it's never something that Richie Torres will address. Go on his social media accounts. It's like 95% all about Israel, and not only defending Israel, but defending their genocide and ethnic cleansing by spreading lies. One of the biggest spreaders of misinformation on social media is Richie Torres. He's the number one person that will go out there and say, 40 beheaded, Hamas beheaded 40 babies. Hamas is committing mass rape and systemic sexual violence against Israeli women. Like, it's been debunked by Electronic Intifada, by the Gray Zone, and he's still out here pushing this lie, day after day after it's been debunked by multiple people, multiple journalists.
Yeah, that's 100% true. If you actually get a chance to see his Twitter account, if he hasn't blocked you, you'll see that he's mainly just out there supporting Israel and tweeting about that, not about the poverty issue in the Bronx or anything like that. I've said this before. Like, Richie Torres isn't working for the United States. I think he's working for the state of Israel. Now, I want to bring up this resolution here because this is something you sent to me. I was not aware of this. Resolution 194. And I want to talk a little bit about this. It says the UN adopts Resolution 194, resolving that refugees wishing to return to their homes and live at peace with their neighbors should be permitted to do so at the earliest practicable date, and that compensation should be paid for the property of those choosing not to return and for the loss of or damage to property which, under principles of international law or equity, should be made good by the governments or authorities responsible. Let's hear a little bit about this. I don't think a lot of people are aware that this resolution also declared that the Palestinian people would have the right to return.
Yeah. I mean, that says it right there. This was, look at the date. It was right after the creation of Israel. And that's been something that they've kicked down the road ever since.
1940s.
All this talk about two-state, but what about right to return?
And I think that's one of the many criticisms of the state of Israel when they make this argument that, the Palestinian people were offered a two-state solution multiple times. They were offered a state. Max Blumenthal came onto the show about a week ago and debunked that, and just said, no, it wasn't actually a true state. And then also they didn't offer them the right to return. So this resolution right here is really important. And I think what's interesting is you see people like Bernie Sanders right now standing up on the floor of the Senate calling for humanitarian aid, etc., still not willing to call for a ceasefire. But even Bernie Sanders won't even acknowledge this resolution, which he should also be calling for Palestinians to have the right to return. A ceasefire is the bare minimum. What happens after a ceasefire?
Yes, exactly. And we'll be touching on that, of course. And by the way, why they refused the right to return. Or if not, I'll make it clear. The issue is that Zionism wants a Jewish state. If you allow right to return, they lose the demographics. And all of a sudden, oh my God, they're the minority. They have to live in a diverse society. So what? So what? That, to claim that a minority has a right to rule over a territory is racist. It's right out of the Nazi playbook, honestly. It's right out of the South African playbook, honestly, which is one of the reasons why I think South Africa was smart enough and brave enough and had the moral compass to bring the case for the ICJ.
Well, you actually came up with a list of demands, which I thought is pretty interesting here. It says petition to the UN, restore historic Palestine. And I can put the link for people to sign the petition as well. I want to go through some of the demands that were listed here. In addition to the legal dissolution of Israel by the UN, we declare the following steps imperative for all nations of the world, including the United States, to be enforced by military might if need be. Demand an immediate Israeli ceasefire. Open the Rafah crossing to bring in medical aid and fuel supplies for hospitals in Gaza. Worldwide aid to Gaza refugees. Free all Palestinian political prisoners held in Israeli jails. Freeze all Israeli assets held in foreign banks. Cut off all trade with Israeli-held companies. Demand Israel immediately dismantle and surrender all weapons of mass destruction in its power, nuclear, biological, and chemical. Arrest Prime Minister Netanyahu, his immediate cabinet, top-ranking members of the IDF, and any/all U.S. officials complicit in Israeli war crimes. Such a list should include, but not limited to, Naftali Bennett, Yoav Gallant, President Isaac Herzog, Ghassan Aliyan, Joe Biden, and Anthony Blinken. Peace requires justice. Such individuals must be remanded to the ICC for prosecution. In the spirit of the 1945-1946 Nuremberg trials, the IDF/IOF soldiers credibly accused of war crimes must face justice as well. Creation of an independent, objective investigation into the events of October 7th as recompense for the errors of 1947, the UN should facilitate the creation of a new single Palestinian state incorporating the following traits: recognition of right to return to all Palestinians, including refugees from the Nakba who currently reside in other nations. B, land restitution to all Palestinians in the form of affording each a parcel of land residence in whatever area of Palestine they prefer, or direct monetary payment should they wish to immigrate. C, granting full and equal citizenship to all Palestinians in the new nation. D, creation of an enforceable timetable for enacting new elections for all governmental positions, and the writing of a constitution for the new nation, including a Bill of Rights with universal guarantees for all citizens, regardless of ethnicity, race, or religion. E, removal of all illegal settlements. And F, current Israeli citizens will not be expelled from the new restored nation borders, but rather encouraged to stay and help rebuild should they choose. Let's talk a little bit about this. I think these demands are pretty powerful.
Yeah, I'm gonna let Guys and Girl do most of the talking here, but one thing I want to make clear at the onset is that centering a demand for a ceasefire, as you said, Sabby, is not enough. And
Right.
we can't just do ceasefire now rallies and demonstrations. Like, real justice would include these demands in any rally, and you don't have to, take our demands, but you need to be pushing for the right of return, for the creation of a single state, for the freedom for all Palestinian prisoners, and an end to all U.S. aid to Israel. Like, period. Like, if your rallies or demonstrations are not talking about these things, then it's not a material help to the Palestinian people. So we really wanted to put this out there to help and guide people. Take some of these demands, build a demo around one or all of these demands, but please, we have to move beyond ceasefire now.
Right. I agree with you 100%. I just want to add again, this is something Miko Khalid made very clear when he came here to speak at MIT. A ceasefire is the bare minimum. The bare minimum. When this war ends, whenever this ends, Something has to happen. Like, what happens to the Palestinian people when this is all over? So something has to be, set in stone. And the United States government is notorious for this. By the way, guys, I put the link to the petition in the chat. The US government is notorious for this. They like to send weapons to these countries to help them fight these wars. But once the war ends and the country is destroyed, then the US government is like, okay, it's out of our hands. Try to rebuild if you can.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. I mean, the issue is that if you have a ceasefire, that's just kicking the can down the road. I mean, peace requires justice. First of all, we're up to about, if you actually look at the number of people who are missing and presumed dead, we're looking at about 31,000 dead civilians in a genocide. First of all, if you let Israel get away with this with no international trial, as we did with Nuremberg, it's going to happen again.
Yes.
And number two is, if you were a parent who dug your kid, what was left of your kid, out of the rubble, wouldn't you want justice? So we can either do it with actual law and order, which the US likes to claim that it's for, with international trials, or it's just going to be a backlash.
That's right. And I think what's important for people to understand as well is that what you mentioned there about the numbers, that's very important. That's what I've been explaining to people. The numbers are actually higher than what the media is saying. Remember, there are still people buried under the rubble. So as time goes by, that number is going to continue to increase. So always add at least a couple 5,000 to that number. So it's a mess. It's a mess.
It's also, on the issue of land theft and the genocide and ethnic cleansing that Israel is founded on. And by the way, I highly recommend reading the book by Ilan Pappé called The Ethnic Cleansing of Palestine. By the way, he's a signatory of this petition.
That is awesome. That is awesome.
Yeah. And given that, justice isn't, oh, you stole my life savings, I'll give you half back. It's, you want restitution.
That's right. That's right. Well, I put the link to the petition in the chat, guys. If you get a chance, go ahead and sign that petition. I think something needs to be done here. I think you have a great list of demands. I think it's a comprehensive list of demands instead of just ceasefire, now and that's it. But thank you guys. Thank you, both of you, so much for coming on, and continue doing what you're doing.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sabby. And we really just hope that, as you mentioned, that folks can take these demands and really build demonstrations and rallies in your own community. Like, feel free to follow BX Anti-War. Feel free to reach out to us. If you want help, just like planning something, we'd be happy to have a conversation with you. But what we really need to do is we need everyone that's listening right now to start thinking about, what demonstration are you going to host in your community? What rallies can you do? What politicians can you target? What corporations that are supportive of this genocide can you target, right? Start thinking about those things, and we'd be more than happy to help you out. But we really need to stay in the streets. I don't care how cold it is. People are surviving, daily, aerial bombardment. You can put on a jacket and a hat and go outside and protest.
That's right. All right, guys. Well, where can people find you?
You can follow me at BXCommie on Twitter or X, formerly Twitter, or follow BX Anti-War on Twitter as well.
And I'm Gaijin Girl at 2004 on Twitter.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye. Stay strong.
All right, guys. I hope you can learn a lot there from Bronx Anti-War Coalition. Like I said, they're real ones. And just follow them on Twitter because they're always doing something. I mean, every time I turn around, they're hosting an event, whether it's an anti-war event or we are going to confront a politician event. So every time I turn around, they're doing that. We'll go ahead and shout out patrons and then the thumbnail, and we'll go ahead and get into the other stories tonight. So thank you so much to those of you who are Sabby patrons. I really appreciate your help over here for keeping the lights on. If you're interested in being a Sabby patron, I have 5 categories: Ultimate, Sabinators, Sabsters, Sabbies, and of course, members. All of their names are listed here, and you can also see their names scrolling across the bottom of the screen there on the ticker. And I want to give a shout out to new Sabby patrons. Over here, we call them newbies. Let's give it up for Gamine Brioche. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly, Gamine. Gamine Brioche, Michael Harrison, Mcgovern Salim, and Tiki Greer. Let's give them a big whoop, whoop. Thank you guys so much. Really appreciate your support. Go to some of the comments here. Shout out to, before I forget, shout out to Hard Lens Media. JB and I announced this earlier, but I want to say it again on here. You guys know Hard Lens Media was going through it in reference to their channel. YouTube did remove their channel, but I did find out today that Hard Lens Media now has their main channel back. So kudos to them. Go over there and show them some love. They've been through a lot. So go over there and show them some love. Dionysus says, how much is he taking from AIPAC? Over 100,000, if I remember correctly. I've shown it on this show before, assuming you're talking about Richie Torres. Danny says, so racist that they won't even accept Ethiopian Jews in order to get a majority demographic. That's right. And not to mention also sterilizing Ethiopian Jewish women. That was another one. Shout out to Joey Peltier for being a Sabby member for 6 months. We need demand a UN resolution demanding land back for the Palestinian people. Deport the white European colonizers. I'm just saying. I hear you, Joey. I hear you. Okay. What are we discussing tonight, ladies and gentlemen? We have a couple of more stories here to cover. So let's go ahead and show that beautiful thumbnail and dive right in. Tonight, we are discussing RFK Jr. boots Ray Mcgovern. I don't know if you've heard about this story, but Ray Mcgovern was not shy to share it. So we're going to cover that tonight, and we're going to talk about why that is significant. We're also going to discuss Joy Behar has upset a lot of people over some controversial comments that she just recently made. I said Joy was showing her whole class. We'll get into that story. We're also going to discuss the PBD Cringe debate. And that gentleman there on the right, that's Basim Youssef. He's an Egyptian comedian. He's hilarious. But this debate is probably one of the craziest ones that I've seen. That's why I said yikes there. And we actually just spoke with the Anti-Bronx War Coalition, demands for Bibi, but not just obviously Netanyahu, everybody, every country, the UN, the United States government, those demands need to be heard. Okay. We're going to go into our next story here. It has been a long time since I've actually watched the show The View, and there's good reason for that. I actually think that when it comes to politics, and I think that when it comes to some of the economic issues that we have in this country, I believe that their analysis is quite cringe. You have to remember that these women are very rich, and I'm going to show you what that looks like. Well, recently, Joy Behar actually just came under fire for making a pretty classist comment towards Gen Zers. Let's go ahead and get into this clip here from Case Study QB. Joy Behar tells Gen Z to get a job. That's right, folks. And of course, Fox Business actually aired this as well. Of course, they're in agreement of this. Listen to this.
In defense of Gen Z, they're not hitting the milestones the way every generation before them did. They're owning homes at a lower rate. This is wild. 45% of people between ages 18 to 29 still live with their parents. They feel left behind by the economy, and they also see everybody trying to not age. So they get a job. No, but they have jobs. No, they have to work more than.
So you see this, right? You see this? Okay. So the young woman here who was speaking in the white, she's actually correct. Joy Behar's response is get a job.
35% of people between ages 18 to 29 still live with their parents. They feel left behind by the economy, and they also see everybody trying to not age. So they get a job. No, but they have jobs. No, they have to work more than jobs. There's a million job openings in this country. Get a job.
They've also lived through a pandemic. They've lived through the worst of times. I'm raising 2 Gen Zers, so boo-hoo.
Kevin?
So let's just pause there for a second. So this is Joy Behar here on the left, Miss Get a Job. So a couple of things. The first thing, Joy Behar again, believe she would fall under the boomer category. So just keep that in mind. Joy Behar believes that the reason why Gen Z is struggling economically is because they're not working. They're not willing to work, right? Okay. Joy Behar is a millionaire. She's rich. And I don't mean she's just rich. She's rich. I'm going to show you her net worth, and then you'll understand. The reality is, whether it's Gen Z or millennials, a lot of people are working multiple jobs. And you should not have to do that in this country. One of the wealthiest countries in the world. You shouldn't have to work multiple jobs. You see, Joy, in her little small world, she thinks that if someone is struggling economically and they're living with their parents, it means that they're not working. Well, let me tell you a little story. When I graduated undergrad, I moved in with my parents for a year and I worked. I had 2 jobs and I worked my ass off. I lived with my parents for a year so that I could save money and get my own. Okay? So my parents were willing to help me out. The reality is not everybody has parents that can do what my parents did. That's just the reality. But if I were to tell Joy Behar during that time, if I were to say, it's really rough out here economically, I'm working 2 jobs. Yes, I'm living with my parents so I can save money. Joy Behar, get a job. There's a lot of openings out there, she says. Go apply for a job. This is the same woman that was a Bernie Sanders supporter for Bernie's 2016 presidential campaign. Bernie Sanders, of course, was running on what? The class issue. He was running on the economy. He was running on wealth inequality, and he was calling out the banks. Now, all of a sudden, Joy Behar pretends that she doesn't understand these economic issues. The kids are just lazy, according to Joy. Rich Joy. All of these women on this panel, on this show, are wealthy. This is not just a regular 9-to-5 job that you go to where they may be making like 6 figures. These women are wealthy. This is Joy's mindset. Now, this was on Fox Business. Let me show you what they said on Fox Business.
I think this is one of those rare occasions when you will agree with Joy Behar. Get a job. Is that right?
I have a couple of Gen Zers in my family. I kicked them out a long time ago. The only way is what my mother used to say to me. The dead bird under the nest never learns how to fly.
2 rich men. Okay. This gentleman here, he's one of the hosts of the show Shark Tank. Again, entrepreneur. Again, 2 rich men. So have you guys noticed this pattern? This pattern of rich people telling people who are working class and poor to get a job. I got mine. You can get yours too. Again, if I had to guess, I assume they would fall into that boomer category. And I'm saying this again because I'm going to explain to you why that is significant. The economy that boomers, and that's my parents, the economy that they grew up in has been very different for those of us who are millennials and those of us who are Gen Z. We never earned what we should have income-wise when we were our parents' age and when they were our age. It never matched up. Our wages did not adjust for inflation. Everything continued to increase. Then you had the housing crisis in 2008. You had a pandemic, like all of these things that have happened. So this is why you have to understand when they make these comments, they didn't go through the same things that a lot of us went through. So keep that in mind. There's a reason why my parents were able to say, yes, you can come stay with us for a year and save money and we'll help you out. My generation, however, we would not be able to do that for our kids. That's what people have to understand. We're talking about a generation where some people not only had a home, they had two homes. Okay? Like they had a main home, which is where they mainly reside, and they had like a vacation home. This is what we're talking about, folks. Or they had a starter home, and then they said, okay, let's move up and let's get a bigger house. There is no starter home for us. What you get is what you got. This is it. This is it.
And that means you can't keep them in the house. They've got to go fend for themselves out there, and there are lots of jobs. But to be fair, Stuart, remember, we raised rates from basically 0 to 5.5%, changing the whole cost equation for a generation that had never seen high rates. They've never paid 23% of their credit cards. Now they are, and they're freaking out.
In defense of
think about what he just said. They never paid 23% on their credit cards. Now they are, and they're freaking out. You just assume that all of these Gen Z kids have credit cards? You just make that assumption? Again, two rich men criticizing people who are struggling economically. And you got rich, bougie ass Joy Behar, who all of a sudden doesn't remember that there were economic struggles and this was a big crisis in this country, even though she supported Bernie Sanders' campaign in 2016. And that was all he freaking talked about. Now, all of a sudden, she doesn't remember. Midwestern Marks had a good take on this. I want to play this clip here.
Joy Behar of The View scoffs at young people feeling left behind by the economy. Oh, please get a job. Boo-hoo. Yeah, we already tried that, Joy. We have jobs. And guess what? 80% of us are still living paycheck to paycheck. It's almost like capitalism incentivizes the employers to drive wages down as much as possible so they can maximize their own profits. It's almost like capitalism leads to inflation and a constant increase in the price of goods. It's almost like this economy isn't working for anybody except shareholders on Wall Street and rich condescending people in Hollywood. Like, is Joy Behar really telling us to get a job? Being a host of The View is not a real job. It's just like 2 or 3 upper-class liberal white women plus Meghan McCain and Whoopi Goldberg complaining about stuff and giving half-baked political analysis. Meanwhile, my buddies who work concrete 9 hours a day still can't afford healthcare, and Joy Behar's answer to them is to get a job. Yeah, let's not change our healthcare system so that we have universal care like every other developed country in the freaking world. Nah, let's just tell people to get a job and scapegoat workers and young people and say that they haven't worked hard enough for healthcare. They're lazy. You gotta earn your insulin, you son of a bitch.
Something to seriously think about, right? Now I want to show you why Joy needs to be quiet. Let's look at the net worth, okay? Because I want you to see what these women are actually making. People think this is just some, casual anchor job. No. These women are making bank. The View host rank by net worth. So let's go down here, okay? 6th, you have Alyssa Farah Griffin. That's the woman who was wearing the white jacket, who was talking about what Gen Zs are complaining about. It says she made $183,000 in 2020 working for Trump, and given her career path and current job, she's not exactly hurting for money. Okay, so they don't give too much about her. Anna Navarro, which I call her like wannabe View, because like Anna just shows up every now and then, you know. It's like she's like one of the women that are a part of the cast for Real Housewives, but they weren't given a feature, so to speak. Like they're not a part of the main cast of Real Housewives, but they're in almost every episode and they're still trying to become one of the main housewives. She's like that. So if we want to look at her net worth, and we can see here, hers is an estimate. Again, she's not on there as much. They said, as a newbie on the show, Navarro was likely pulling in around $250,000 per year. And that's just that show. And then it says Navarro has an estimated net worth of $3 million. $3 million for Sunny Hostin. So Sunny Hostin's net worth is estimated to be $3 million. Also, you got to remember, these women don't just do the show. They also write books. Let's continue. It goes here. Someone was awarded 3 years back pay. Oh yeah, I remember this part. And it says she's now reportedly paid $1.6 million per year. Sarah Haynes. So let's see how much Sarah Haynes is worth. Haynes has an estimated net worth of $6 million. She reportedly makes $1.5 million a year for The View. Now we get to Joy. Now notice Joy is ranked second. This is the woman who's complaining and telling people to get a job. So let's see how much Joy Behar is worth. Hold on to your seat for this one because y'all going to get pissed. You guys are going to be mad right here. Behar worked on various TV shows and movies, as well as her career as a stand-up comedian and writer, has earned her a net worth of $30 million. She makes about $7 million per year for The View. Let me just say this again, folks. Joy Behar, her net worth is $30 million. Net worth is what you own minus what you owe. So there's that. Then on top of that, The View was paying her $7 million a year to sit at that table and to say stupid things like, go get a job. Do you think she's worth $7 million a year for that gig? Go get a job, she says. And last but not least is Whoopi Goldberg, who is number one in reference to the pay here. And it says Whoopi Goldberg's net worth sits at $60 million. In 2016, her salary was estimated to be between $5 million to $6 million range. Today, some sources place it at $8 million. So these women don't have room to talk about anybody needing to have a job or get a job. That was a very classist statement from Joy Behar. But once again, it goes to show you there are very few class traders out there. There are some. There aren't a lot. There aren't a lot. And Joy apparently is not one of them. You know, because it's easy to look down your nose at people after you already got yours. It's easy to look down your nose at people when your net worth is $30 million and you're making $7 million a year. Then you can just look down your nose. I remember Joy Behar. She said this during Bernie's 2020 campaign. She said that when she went to college, she paid $50 for the semester. $50. But she want to tell you to go get a damn job. Now, we're going to see the comparison here from this gentleman. Why millennials and Gen Z are poorer than ever. Listen to this. This is important.
For younger generations, the cost of living has increased so much that they have 86% less purchasing power than the baby boomers did when they were in their 20s. Now, baby boomers are defined as anyone born from the years 1946 to 1964, and for those boomers, they lived during a time where life was much cheaper, including houses, cars, and education. Yet we hear all the time that younger generations have a ton of flaws, like they're super lazy, or they spend all their money on avocado toast, and there's a constant debate of whether or not younger generations are weaker than the older ones. Well, I took a look at the data and I wanted to know if they were actually having a hard time financially, or was it just the fact that TikTok is rotting their brains and thus their ability to make money.
And you had the medium ice white mocha with 2 extra shots, 2 extra scoops of vanilla soft top and caramel drizzle and extra sugar sprinkles. Yeah, that's me.
Let's talk about the elephant in the room, or in fact, the country, and that is home prices. Now in 2022, when the average millennial turned 33 years old, the median home price in the United States was $433,100. Median household income was around...
Okay, let's just pause it here because I want you to have a chance to look at the numbers. 2022, median home price over $433,000. Median income over $70,000.
$70,000 in 2022. That means if you took 100% of the median income in 2022 and put it towards a home, it would take you roughly 6.11 years of your wages to buy that house outright. Now, of course, that's actually unrealistic. No one's going to take 100% of their income and just go buy a house with it. However, it serves as a really good benchmark metric. Now we can compare how many years of wages previous generations took to buy a house outright compared to what their median income was. And now that's kind of an apples to apples comparison. Now, this benchmark metric is going to be called the home to price income ratio. The average baby boomer turned the age of 33 back in the year 1988. That was the first year that Nike came out with the slogan, "Just do it." The Ford Escort was the most popular car at the time. And Back to the Future 2, one of my favorite movies of all time, was still being filmed. The median home price back in 1988 was $110,000, and the median income of a boomer was just about $27,000.
Pause. I just want you to see the difference, just how drastic the difference is. 1988, median home price over $110,000, median income over $27,000. So you can see the difference. This is what people like Joy Behar either are too, I don't want to say too foolish to understand, or either she does understand, but she's pretending not to see it. So it would have taken you 4 years to pay off that house if you use your entire income to pay off the house.
That means that their home to price income ratio was around 4. It would take 4 years of their median income in order to buy the median home at the time. In fact, some high earners back in the day were able to pay off their houses just with 1 or 2 years of wages. Now, historically, an average house in the US costs around 5 times the yearly household income. During the housing bubble of 2006 to 2008, it ballooned to a ratio of 7, as we can see here. But what's more startling now is that the home to price income ratio these days is well past that of the housing bubble levels.
Now, see, Joy wants to pretend that these things did not happen. She wants to pretend, so we have the housing crisis right here. So you can see the difference. A mess.
If you thought a ratio of 7 was bad, let's actually look at the average house price to average income ratio in the United Kingdom. Our friends or lads or mates across the pond in the UK have been seeing ratios consistently over 7 for the past 10 years, and lately it's been over 9. So if you're British and watching this video, I'm sorry, you're kind of more screwed than the average US citizen is, but at least you have some tea. I'm drinking some tea right now, and hopefully that kind of gives you some solace. Now, what's even more interesting is if we plot home price against the median household income. So this is a graph of median annual household income plotted against the Case-Shiller Home Price Index. That's the index that seeks to measure the price level of existing single-family homes. So we're comparing a percentage change between the two. You can see that the general trend here is that the household income in black is above the home price index in red from the years of 1955 all the way to about 2005-ish. The black line being above the red line is a good thing. It means home prices are at least somewhat manageable. When the housing market started to bubble up pre-2008, we can see that the red line crossed over and it subsequently went back down in 2010 when
and you can see here, see the black line is meeting the red line again.
houses were cheaper after the crash. But these days, home prices have shot way above the median household income again, and that's definitely not good for the younger generation. The UK, by the way, even worse. I think oftentimes we see the news going on in America, and we think it's already been pretty bad, but if we just look at our English potatoes over there, we can see that they've been dealing with this for quite some time already. So if you thought that was bad, here's another graph of inflation versus the home prices from 1970 to 2023. You can see that the change in consumer price index here has been steadily going up linearly over time in the bottom darker blue.
So pay attention to this, guys. Inflation versus home price from 1970 to 2023.
And while home prices have been outpacing inflation since 1970, in the past decade, you can just see this vertical increase and it's basically ballooning like crazy. So this article, which actually pulls data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics in the United States, states that, quote, spending $100,000 on a home in 1990 would equate to spending about $377,000 on a home today. For everyday living costs, though, $100,000 back in 1990 on goods and services would require $231,000 to get the same amount of goods today. So while inflation is definitely present, home prices have outpaced inflation by a good margin now for quite some time. There are a couple of reasons for this, and they have to do with demographics. So first is that the boomers didn't face as much competition back in the day. There simply weren't that many people living in the United States in the 1970s and 1980s, and population growth has really exploded in the past.
So boomers didn't really have to fight for people to buy a house. They didn't really have to fight with other people to buy a house, right? There's bidding wars that we have in reference to home ownership, especially here in Massachusetts. People are willing to forego homeowner inspections just to get the house. That's how insane it is. You should never forego a homeowner inspection, by the way. You should never forego that. You can end up with all kinds of issues. That house may look good on the surface, and then you end up realizing, oh no, there was water damage in this house. Oh no, this happened, that happened. So it's important that you get that home ownership, that inspection taken care of. But they had less competition because there was less people. So if you had less competition, the housing prices are obviously going to be less.
So back in the day, houses weren't as much in demand, and so you didn't really see that much competition for them. Boomers were also likely to get married early, and thus they would have a multiple income household from an early age. That means they were able to afford houses than the current younger generations. I'm sure that you've heard that millennials, they've been staying home a lot longer, and so they're actually delaying marriage, and they're staying single a lot longer too. According to the Pew Research Center, more than 4 in 10 millennials do not live with a family on their own, around 45%. That means only 55% of millennials live with their own families, and as you can see in the previous generations, this number was closer to 69%, nice, or even 85% for these silent generations. Another huge reason why boomers were able to afford houses was the lower cost of education and the overall lower student loan debt balances that they experienced. It's no secret that tuition at four-year institutions is absolutely insane these days. I mean, the average price of a private school tuition or even a public school tuition is somewhere in the $30,000 to $50,000 a year range. Student debt is now a $1.7 trillion crisis, and as we can see here, over the 30 years between 1991 and 2021, average tuition prices have more than doubled.
So that's another thing too. I'm not going to play the entire video, but these are just some of the examples that Joy Behar needs to see, especially since she said she paid like $50 a semester. I didn't get through undergrad with one textbook that was under $50. And she paid $50 for tuition? So as I've said before, guys, there are very few class traders. Corey, I'm ready for the second part whenever you're ready on the Type VNC. There are very few class traders. The ones that are there, that's great. It's awesome. But the reality is a lot of people like Joy that are in that millionaire, income bracket, they like their comfortability. They don't want other people. A lot of times they don't want to hear about other people's sob stories. They don't want to hear about their complaints about the economy because they're doing just fine. Doing just fine. Imagine making $7 million a year. Let me go to some of the comments here. Thank you for the member for 2 months. Sorry. Thank you, Mastermind Hour, who's been a member for 2 months, says Israel is spelled A before E, except after river to sea. You're adorable, Mastermind. Thank you for the super chat, NY Varsity. The days of putting yourself through college by waiting tables has been over for some time, and so is The View. Thank you, Cool Blue. The View says, F you to the young. The young voters aged 18 to 29 are the first to vote Democrat in elections. These polls showing 18 to 29 shifting away from Democrats is because Biden and the Dems offer them no helpful policy. I would agree with that. JB says he will have Eddie on his channel this Saturday. Yes, that was Eddie from Midwestern Marks, the TikTok short that you saw there. And JB says that'll be 7 p.m. ET. Thank you, NY Varsity. Going on a show to talk equals 7 million. School teacher salary equals 50K. Hearing Joy pontificate equals priceless. And honestly, the teacher salary of 50K, in some states is even less than that. Thank you, JM, not exactly 7 million. And thank you, Lyle, 69, not nice. Thank you so much for that. We're moving on to our next story here. I'm not sure if everyone is familiar what happened to Ray Mcgovern recently. So Ray Mcgovern actually was at an RFK Jr. event. He wanted to talk to RFK Jr. about his position on Palestine. So Ray Mcgovern, for those who are not aware, former CIA analyst, he was a whistleblower. I would say probably an important person to hear from. An important person to hear from. Well, he got the not so royal treatment. He actually shared this on his YouTube channel and he shared it on Twitter, which is where I saw it first. And it says Ray ushered out of a Bobby rally. So check this out, guys.
I'm just walking him out and jumping in the
So this guy right here, let me pull it back just a little bit so you can see. This is Ray Mcgovern right here. Gentleman right here in the black shirt.
So Ray, how do we get in touch?
Thank you. Excuse me, guys. We're gonna actually ask him to ask him to leave. So. No, we should so we actually have to have you leave right now, so we're gonna.
Well, how do you feel about Palestinian children below the age of 5? Below the age of 5 that are dead, okay? That are dead. And you're asking me to get out because you don't want this candidate to address the question. He's chicken to address the question, and what he does, he repeats, Israel lobby.
So Ray Mcgovern, for those who are not aware, he did work with, if I remember correctly, RFK. He did work with RFK Jr.'s family. So just FYI. So the question that Ray had, because he knows, and if you follow Ray on Twitter, you'll see this as well. Ray McGovern knows that RFK and JFK did not have the same position when it comes to Israel. And that's why he wanted to obviously talk to RFK Jr., but they wouldn't even this is the first event. There were two. They wouldn't even allow Ray McGovern into the event. This is what you're seeing right now. This part where they're telling him, no, you can't. They won't even allow him to come in. Look.
That are dead, okay? That are dead. And you're asking me to get out because you don't want this candidate to address the question. He's chicken to address the question, and what he does, he repeats, Israel lobby. Come to the right, please.
And those people protecting him, I have to go back and check the Twitter, but I think this woman right here, The one in the I think that's Stephanie Spear. These are the people that are part of RFK Jr.'s campaign. You see how they protect him and prevent him from getting any types of tough questions? Well, it did happen again anyway. Shout out to Jose Vega for sharing this. So this is when RFK Jr. was in North Carolina, and Ray McGovern, the guy you're going to hear in the background, he's going to interject. This is what happens when you don't let people ask these questions in a more formal way and you prevent them from going to the event. Here we have another event where Ray McGovern just shouts it out. So it says, here's Ray McGovern's intervention against RFK Jr. What about the children in Palestine?
This word got out about. I'm happy to answer questions later. When in 1986, this word of.
So I'll play it again so you can hear what he said, because he called him a coward.
This word got out about. I'm happy to answer questions later.
So he told him, he said, I worked with your uncle, right? So Ray McGovern knows. That's why I told you, and I said this before, this is why RFK Jr. won't have that conversation with Max Blumenthal. This is why he didn't want to have this conversation with Ray McGovern. This is why he shies away from anyone that's going to ask him about that's especially particularly knowledgeable about it. And Ray McGovern is very knowledgeable about obviously where JFK stood on this position, where RFK stood on this position. So he avoids those people because he doesn't want to have to answer these tough questions. Now, if he don't want to have to answer these tough questions, particularly from people who are very knowledgeable about the subject, and Ray McGovern is a former CIA analyst who was a whistleblower, why would you then in turn believe that RFK Jr. is actually going to push back on the CIA like he says? Let me ask this question in another way, folks. If Ray McGovern is a whistleblower, ex-CIA whistleblower, and RFK Jr. says he is going to push back against the CIA and take away the censorship of the CIA, and RFK Jr. is now willing to talk to a former CIA whistleblower, what in the hell makes you think that RFK Jr. is actually going to push back against the CIA? You won't talk to Ray McGovern? Of all people? You have criticism for the CIA, but you employ CIA family member? You won't talk to Ray McGovern? Probably one of the nicest people. These signs are very, very telling. So you'll see here, this is where Ray McGovern actually tweeted this out. RFK Jr. telling fish stories, literally in Raleigh, at minute 15:55. I asked 10,000 Palestinian children already killed in genocide. Q&A later, I added, I worked for your uncle. You are no JFK. His reaction suggests we need to keep speaking for the children. Now, we all know that RFK Jr. is a part of the Children Defense Fund. It's really interesting to me that someone that cares so much about children doesn't seem to care about those Palestinian kids, though. Just like Ray McGovern said, sold out to the lobby. Now, one person actually did get to question him about Israel and Gaza. And I want you to listen to how RFK Jr. is just going to stand here and tell lie after lie after lie. And you can tell he's very uncomfortable with this particular subject. Check this out.
You're up.
So South Africa has brought charges of genocide against Israel in the International Court of Justice. I wanted to ask, what do you make of those charges of genocide? And people are also calling for a ceasefire. What do you think about a ceasefire?
I think the charges of genocide are absurd. If you want to look at a genocide, look what's happened to Jews in the Arab countries in 1948.
Let me just pause there for a second. He says that he thinks that the call of genocide is absurd. How many people been killed in Gaza so far? What, over 25,000 people and counting? Okay. The UN has already declared, if you read the definition of a genocide, what Israel has done to the Palestinian people in Gaza already fits the definition of genocide. And it's not just about the bombing, it's also about the starvation. Purposefully starving people in Gaza. People standing in line for hours hoping to get a bowl of soup. I'll show you what that looks like. We're talking about kids. But it's absurd, according to RFK Jr. That's right. RFK, the UN is wrong. South Africa's wrong. Human Rights Watch is wrong. Everybody's just wrong about this. And you're correct.
There are 1 million Jews in 27 Arab countries. Today there are 15,000 left. Look at Israel. In 1948, there were 750,000 Palestinians. Today, there are 7.5 million.
Now, let's do something called basic math. Because, see, he tried to play dumb. And obviously, the person who asked him this question wasn't thinking about math. Okay. If the population of the people have increased, that doesn't mean you didn't kill a lot of them. If the population of the Palestinians has increased, because Dave Rubin tried to use the same whack ass excuse, what that in turn means is that Israel has been expelling more and more Palestinians into Gaza. If you're taking Palestinians out of other areas of Israel and you are pushing them out, you're expelling Palestinians from the West Bank, expelling them from their homes. Obviously, they are going to end up in the place where Palestinians are allowed to be. Like, I don't know. People don't know how to do math. RFK Jr. is a lawyer. You made it through law school. You can't add. You can't subtract and add. It's common sense, people. It's common sense. So every time Israel continues to expel Palestinians in the West Banks from their home, obviously those people have to go somewhere. The dumbest thing I ever heard. The dumbest thing I've ever heard, and that is a Zionist talking point. Let's continue. It doesn't make any sense. Look, let me make an example with African Americans. When people use the argument and say, well, this many African Americans have been killed over time. Well, the population increased from 12% to 13%. Okay, so maybe people were having some babies and then other people moved around. That still doesn't mean you didn't kill a lot of them. People got to wake up to this, man.
So the charge Israel with genocide is exactly the opposite. Of course, it's a very, very damaging charge. It's the worst thing that you can say, but it's part of a strategy of propaganda against Israel. And if you look at each one of these charges, that it's an open prison, that it's ethnic cleansing, that
propaganda against Israel. Notice the propaganda for RFK Jr. It's always Israel has done nothing wrong. He won't admit that they've done anything wrong. Anything. They've done nothing wrong. It's propaganda against Israel. This idea of ethnic cleansing. Have you been paying attention? Have you been paying attention? How can you sit up here and pretend you don't hear the statements coming out of Netanyahu's mouth? Out of the Israeli ministry's mouth? How can you sit up here and pretend you have not heard these statements where they have explicitly said they want the Palestinian people gone, that they want a greater Israel just for Jewish people? But it's all propaganda against Israel. Because according to RFK Jr., Israel has done nothing wrong. This is an entire clown show.
there's an occupation. All of them are just factually absurd.
People are calling for a ceasefire. What are your thoughts on a ceasefire?
I don't, what is the solution? How does Israel get the hostages back? Israel's getting hit by missiles every day. Tel Aviv has twice the population density of Gaza.
Israel is not getting hit by missiles every day. That is a lie. Man, I tell you. Oh my God. This guy is a blatant liar. All he's doing is repeating Rabbi Shmuley talking points. Rabbi Shmuley's over in one ear and saying, this is what's happening, Bobby. And he just repeats what Rabbi Shmuley says. RFK Jr. has never been to Gaza. How can he even dispute that it's an open air prison? The people are fenced in. Would RFK Jr. like to be fenced in? How would he feel if he was fenced in and he was not free to move? Like, this is bad. This is really bad. Oh, and for the people who tell me, well, Sabby, I don't care about this issue. I care more about the pandemic issue, and that's why I'm supporting him. If he lying about this, you don't think he lying about that too? Use your brain, people. Use your brain. He's a politician. This man is acting. He's playing you.
And Hamas is hitting it with missiles every day. How do you stop that? You just want Israel to cease fire? Hamas has said it's not gonna. Oh, I don't, it's a very strange mindset that Israel gets attacked in the worst slaughter of Jews from the Holocaust since the Holocaust.
This guy is such a fucking liar. Such a liar. So see what he's doing? He is doing exactly what Zionists are doing all over social media. They're trying to make it seem like what happened to Israelis on October 7th is 10 times worse than what's happening to the Palestinian people right now. That's what they're doing. All you got to do is look at the casualties. Since RFK Jr. wants to talk about numbers, look at the casualties. They are seriously trying to pretend like 1,200 is more than 25,000. That's what they're doing. They're pretending that because it's the type of people. Because what RFK Jr. is telling you, without saying so blatantly, is that Israelis are more important. That they matter more. That's what he's saying to you.
Holocaust, and people are now turning this around and making it look like Israel deserved it. And it's Israel's doing what it has to do, what every country would do to protect its population. It has a duty to do that.
So, of course, the person who confronted him doesn't ask him anything about Israel killing their own hostages, the ones that were waving white flags. Notice how he keeps it in reference to October 7th. Doesn't talk about anything that happened before October 7th. You don't hear RFK Jr. saying anything about Israel kicking Palestinians out of the West Bank. Hamas is not in the West Bank. The settlements are illegal. RFK Jr. won't mention that. Because that's even more blatant, because the fact is Hamas is not there. Someone who's a part of the Children Defense Fund. Let me show you what's happening to the children right now in Gaza, since he claims to care about kids so much. Shout out to Case Study QB for this clip here. Growing misery for children in Gaza.
It's about the children of Gaza, nearly half of the population, because for them, the misery is only growing. Here's NBC's Richard Engel.
For the 1 million children in Gaza, life has become unbearable. Mohammed Al-Yazigi is 13 years old and now has more responsibilities than he ever imagined. With his mother killed in an Israeli airstrike and his father missing, presumed still buried under rubble, Mohammed is taking care of his 7 brothers and sisters. They live in a tent in Rafah. Israel ordered Palestinians to come here in southern Gaza for their own safety as Israeli troops battle Hamas. A pile of clothing and blankets is all Mohammed's family has left. I want this war to end and to go back to school and be with my friends, he says. Instead, every morning, Mohammed collects firewood. and has learned to cook for his siblings. With no money at all, neighbors sometimes give him handouts. But it's not nearly enough, so he joins the scramble at the food lines. Children can wait for up to 8 hours for a single.
You see this? See, this is the other piece. It's not just the bombing. All these kids waiting in line for an hour, hoping just to get a container of soup. That little boy had to grow up fast. That little boy has to behave like an adult and has to take care of his other siblings. He's still a kid himself.
Pot of soup. Mohammed's youngest sister is still a newborn, but he can't get her to drink the formula shopkeeper gave him. He tries to sing like his mother did, but he doesn't know how to soothe the baby. Also in Rafah are Nadine and Jude Abdulatif. She's also 13, also from Gaza City. She's moved 6 times to escape the fighting before ending up here.
What we're living is horrible, and what we're practically living like animals, and we shouldn't live like that. We should live like human beings.
Medically vulnerable children have been pushed over the edge. In October, we visited a home for disabled children in Gaza City and saw Iyas, blind and with debilitating complex needs. He and the others have also been displaced to Rafah, now living in a garage. He's become very stiff without the medicine he needs to relax his uncontrollable muscle contractions.
I don't want our future to live like this. I want it to be changed.
The stakes. NBC's Richard Engel, thank you.
That's the part people aren't seeing for the most part. Surprised they showed that on MSNBC. But I will say this much. If you donated to RFK Jr.'s campaign, contact the campaign and ask for your money back. Contact the campaign and ask for a refund. Because that is absolutely horrible. Now, Ray Mcgovern, again, I want to bring up something else that he said. He mentioned something in reference to Israel. He said the Israeli view dominates our media and Congress. And this is an interview that he had with the Community Church of Boston, who I'm very familiar with. I've seen a lot of talks there. Listen to this.
Israel to be more of a liability than an asset in the region?
Well, I think sane people would conclude that years ago. I don't know how it works, but, we have the Israeli view dominating our media, certainly our Congress, and our president does not really seem to be compos mentis. Let me just put it that way. Did he not say to the gay today that he saw more that he saw Hamas having beheaded more children or something like that? I mean, he said that before he saw pictures, but then they said, well, there aren't any pictures. He must imagine it. This is really crucial. If you imagine things, I mean, he might imagine those buttons on the nuclear codes. I just don't know what you do other than you say, well, what we do is get a well-educated citizenry, and we step out and we try to repair these things in whatever way we can. The only thing we shouldn't do is nothing.
Mm-hmm. Great words there from Ray Mcgovern. Again, the Community Church of Boston, they've had a lot of speakers there. It's one of the coolest places to go to, I think, if you want to hear a great discussion. And he was also on Judge Andrew's Freedom podcast, and he was questioned about the South Africa. Here we go. The South Africa case at the ICJ. And I want you to hear what he said about that as well.
Available everywhere in the West. Is it a common belief in the intelligence community that the U.S. can manipulate this court?
Well, yes. Any court or any UN body is a lucrative target for such manipulation. I just want to comment that Barrister Blynn's Irish heritage, well, let me just say that I applaud her sang-froid, her reticence, her calm way of delivering that, because her grandparents and my grandparents were subjected to the same kind of cruel occupation, except they didn't kill us. They didn't get us out of the country. I'm talking about my Irish ancestors, of course.
Right.
How she could keep her composure in that set of circumstances is quite remarkable.
She was arguably, I didn't see the whole thing. I saw clips of nearly all of them. She was arguably the most articulate of all the 8 lawyers, 4 on each side, that addressed the court. But I want to ask you about the corruption of the court. I don't mean bribery type corruption, but I mean, is there political corruption? Is there pressure on these judges? Because the court really issues what we would say what we'd call in America an advisory opinion. They don't have an army to enforce their opinion. Their ruling. They can condemn the Israelis for genocide, and that's not going to move a hair on the head of Prime Minister Netanyahu, unless I'm misreading this right.
Well, it will be a big deal, Judge. In other words, if Israel is made even more a pariah and people follow through with economic measures that weaken Israel and force it to buy more and more on the United States, that will be significant. You're right. It has no enforcement capability. And worse still, I don't know when the judgment's going to come down. No one does that I know of. Some people are saying, well, it should be quick. And of course, Barrister Blynn said, yeah, sure, it should be quick. It's urgent. But, there's all kinds of delaying tactics. You know better than I how many games can be played. And I heard from my friend Ed Snowden via Twitter. And what he said was, I worked in the CIA station under Bush and Cheney, just down the street from the UN bodies in Geneva. And any chance we got, we surged our capability against their communications and everything else. So, there's lots of room. I would be surprised, says Ed, if the U.S. station there, FBI, CIA, NSA, are not surging their capability against all people having to do with the International Court of Justice, even though they meet in The Hague, the headquarters is in Geneva.
What would the...
So what they're basically talking about here is the fact that, is there some type of pressure on those judges at the ICJ, right? So could they be, pressured not to rule against Israel? Oh, absolutely. Could the United States government get involved and put some type of pressure on them and say, don't do it because it'll be bad for Israel's public image? Oh, absolutely. So that's what they were talking about there. But that's actually a longer interview that you can see on Judge's channel here. But the topic of this interview is CIA infiltrating and undermining the ICJ? So that's what he's talking to Ray McGovern there about. Could you imagine? Like, it's just, they pushed this man out. No, you can't be here. No. But we are going to push back and fight against the CIA, damn it. We're just not going to talk to someone who's former CIA analyst and a whistleblower. Get out of here. Get out of here, man. A hot mess. It wasn't a good look, man. It wasn't a good look. Even there were some people, even from RFK that are RFK supporters, even they called it out on Twitter. It was like, whoa, what are you doing here? So I don't know who's running this campaign now, man, but all I'm just to say is like, it's these kinds of incidents do not look good. RFK Jr. doesn't know what he's talking about in reference to Israel and Gaza. He obviously also doesn't seem to know how to do math. So there's that as well. But you're pushing out Ray McGovern. That should be a red sign for people. Let's go to some of the comments here in the chat. Thank you, Lyle. Ray is a bright light in this dark world. May God watch over him. Thank you for this one as well. RFK openly said JFK spying on MLK Jr. was okay. I know he's been striking out this week. He has been striking out. I was like, are you nuts? Rondo, RFK is a lawyer. Lawyers are professional liars. Thank you for the super sticker, Larez. Robbie says, I can't believe I supported that cuck. I'm telling you, man, if you donated to his campaign, contact that campaign and ask for your money back. That's your God-given right. Caleb says, Sabby, we are trying to work on this. Don't know who he is. James, thank you so much. UNICEF, where are they? Where are they? UNICEF, where are they? Those commercials, late night feeding children. I remember those. Thank you for the super chat, Peen Aquium. Let's not forget about the American Indian people when we are talking about genocide. I have not heard anyone bring this up at all. There is only a little over 3 million of us left in the United States. Well, I've brought it up multiple times, actually. In fact, I've actually had panels about that very particular issue. Thank you, Lyle. If the U.S. should be going to war, then it needs to be defending Palestine, not Israel. RFK Jr. is on the wrong side of history. Yeah, I hear you there. Hear you there. We're going to go into our final story tonight. So many of you reached out to me and you were asking me to watch this debate on the PBD podcast. Now, I don't usually watch this podcast, but I did check out this debate because so many of you contacted me and said, you have to watch this discussion. So I watched it and we're going to talk about it. This is also in reference to Israel and Gaza. This conversation got very heated. I was just like, this is cringe as fuck. I was like, this is very cringe, very cringe. So let's go ahead and get into it, guys. So the PBD podcast debate, this is between Adam and Bassem Youssef. So Bassem Youssef is an Egyptian comedian. He's very funny. This isn't the first time that he's talked about this issue, but things really did go down on the PBD podcast. So let's get into this debate here about Israel and Gaza.
The problem that I have with you is that either you're anti-Israel or you're just intellectually lazy. Hear me out. Every problem.
So this is Adam. For those wondering who this guy is, this is the Adam guy.
Nice insult.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. He's insulting me very softly.
I am. Because I believe in having discussion and being forthright rather than when you leave, I'll be like, fuck that guy. I actually think you're a smart guy. I actually think you know your stuff. You're just so fixated that Israel's the problem. The problem in the Middle East, like I said, follow the money. The countries that are succeeding, the Qataris, even the Saudis these days, they're coming into the modern world. They're leaving the 6th century mentality behind and say, let's get into the 21st century, where they need to succeed in whether it's Gaza or whether it's Lebanon or whether it's Syria and whether Afghanistan. They need to focus on GDP, not GDT. Gross domestic product, not gross domestic terrorism. And the problem is they're obsessed. Put the guns down. Put the Quran down. Actually start living by the words that the Quran says, not some false.
So let me go ahead and interrupt him here for just a second. So he said to put the Quran down, but then he also says, live by the words the Quran says. But you want them to put it down? Oh my gosh, I can't make this one up.
Equivalent of what they think is actually going on there. You talk about the genocide in Israel or in Gaza as if it's just a matter of fact. Well, let me show some stats for you, because after you see these stats, Israel's the worst genociders ever. The numbers, according to the world data, if you trust data, between 1990 and 2022, the Palestinian population overall went from 2 million to 5 million, okay?
Pause. So you guys, after you listen to the talking points from RFK Jr. and you hear this guy's talking points, like I told you, this is a part of the Zionist playbook. Notice they all have the same talking point. The population of the Palestinian people increased. Same thing. over and over.
Okay? Pretty bad at genocide if that's what's happening right there. In Gaza, it went from 645,000 to 2.1 million. It's 3x. That ain't genocide to me. Now, to 20,000 people, 30,000 people needlessly killed during this bullshit war that was started by Hamas, is that horrible? 1,000,000%. And any Jew or any Israeli...
Give me that number again. 600,000 to what?
645,000 to 2.1 million.
From what to, from when to where?
This is in 1990 to 2022.
Do you know why they increased?
Because they're having babies like crazy.
No. You see, this is how like when you watch data while being uninformed makes you look very stupid.
Tell me why.
See, he's starting to sweat now. And notice Boston is pretty calm.
Tell me how the population has gone from 2 million to 5 million.
Yeah, because most of the 1.5 extra million didn't come from Gaza. They were pushed away from other parts of Israel. So almost
everybody heard that. Okay. And by the way, this is just common sense. It's common sense. Like if all of a sudden the population from Boston went from 660,000 people to 1 million people, and I mean in Boston, not this greater Boston area, but in Boston went from 660,000 to 1 million people. Well, people will be like, oh my God, did all those people in Boston have that many kids? No, people moved here. It's common sense. It really is common sense. People were put here. That's how you increase the population of the people. Still doesn't mean Israel wasn't killing a lot of people. Still doesn't mean that Israel doesn't going into Gaza and mowing the lawn, as Norm Finkelstein says. So, the Zionist talking points.
These people, they have increased because of refugees being kicked out.
If you're talking about the settlers, those are tens of thousands.
I'm talking about
those
Gaza.
aren't millions of people.
Dude, listen, my wife's family is not from Gaza, and yet they found themselves in Gaza because they were sitting in other cities and villages outside Gaza. This is the systemic pushing of people from other parts of Israel, pushing them to Gaza. That's
not millions of people. This is why I said that you're intellectually dishonest or intellectually lazy.
No,
that's not the cause of millions of people being moved. I'm familiar with the settler stuff and the disengagement in 2006.
But Zionist playbook number 2, okay, this is another thing that they do. When you start debunking their lies, they interrupt you and try to talk over you. Alan Dershowitz does this. Piers Morgan does this. Michael Rappaport does this. This is what they do because they know like, I'm being caught in a lie. Let me try to continue to overtalk them.
What you're talking about? These are people that
millions of people.
What?
Okay.
The people who belong to Gaza are 700,000 people. Right now, Gaza is 2.2 million. That is not birth rate, my friend. These are people pushed from. And by the way, that's not the first time. 1948, at the night of the declaration of the State of Israel, 1.5 million Palestinians were moved overnight. So it's not the first thing. So before you giving me numbers you want to appear smart, know what are behind the numbers, because these are not people that gave in babies. Okay. These are people being pushed from other places in order to be part of the open air prison that it is.
Okay, so then
it's not deliberate.
If you want to fact check me, let me fact check you. Anytime that there's numbers increasing, Basif, going from 650, 450, whatever you want to call it, to 2 million, however it happens, that's the exact opposite of a genocide. So the whole genocide, the whole open air prison are talking points. Are talking points of BS.
No.
So you notice what he slid in there? Now he's sliding in the open air prison is also BS. Are the people not fenced in? Can Palestinian people just exit the gate of Gaza into Israel? No, they can't. Not without special permission. And there have been Palestinians that have been denied that type of access, even for healthcare. So if you have cancer, which I would have to look into the cancer rates in Gaza. If it's somewhat high, I would not be surprised because they have dirty water, right? So if you were someone that has cancer in Gaza, that's not something they can treat at the hospitals there. So you would have to submit a request to be treated at a hospital in Israel that is more advanced, that can treat that particular illness. There have been Palestinians, and I saw this when Anya actually she was covering the story for RT back in the day. There are Palestinians that are denied that right. Just flat out denied. No, you cannot come to the Israeli hospital. So they die. If they weren't in a prison, they could just leave freely. They can't just walk out the gates.
This is why I said you were intellectually lazy, or you just hate Israel.
Basically, this whole thing about you hate Israel and hate Islam. This is a very lazy way to talk to people.
It's kind of like your thing.
What did I tell you that is so lazy? What did I tell you like you're fucking racist?
Because you've already said that multiple times.
No, I didn't say.
Yeah, you said that multiple times.
I said your undertone is racist. No,
okay.
That's not what.
So not me, but what's going on inside of me.
And someone like the way that you analyze numbers is very lazy. Because again,
really, when I actually use stats and data from the most credible sources, that's lazy.
These are numbers that were outside of Gaza.
You've said no stats. You've given fucking opinions the whole time.
It's like saying that California has increased triple, or people in Texas increased because of birth rate. No, they increased because people from California started moving. Voluntarily. You have pushed 1.5 million people outside of Gaza, inside of Gaza in a matter of 12 years. And that's why the number has inflated. It's not because they were giving birth rate.
So then where's the genocide?
They were evacuated.
Where's this alleged genocide happening?
So see, once Bassem here was able to debunk his population claim, now it's, where's this genocide at?
Happening right now under your eyes.
So as of 3 months ago, there was no genocide. So it's just a new.
Well, we didn't actually use the word genocide before 3 months ago.
Okay, but you've been calling for the river for the sea.
We didn't use it
for decades.
Well, also Israel have a lot of maps that is putting in the greater Israel from the Nile and the Euphrates. That's genocide for 5 countries there. And this is not by people in the street or people on YouTube. These are ministers. These are officials in the official government of Netanyahu. If you have someone, an Arab president, like the Egyptian president or the Jordanian king tell you from the river and the sea, it's like, oh, it's the Arab authorities. You are basically complaining people on Facebook and the official viewpoint of the Israeli government. You're basically comparing apples to oranges. It doesn't make any sense. You're basically comparing activists with people with power, with money, and with weapons. So I don't know how come you're comparing them.
What's your solution?
See, that's a really good point. Like, people, the Zionists are more upset with the activists, those of us in the streets that have literally no, we don't have the amount of power that Israel has, right? We have power in numbers, but we don't have the resources that the state of Israel has or anything like that. So they're more upset with us. We're not the ones out there killing people. We're not the ones that enclosed Palestinian people. You see, this has been a very well-kept secret, I think, for a long time. Those of us that have been following this issue for the past couple years or whatever, we've known about it. But what I noticed was after October 7th, it was really interesting how many people I came across that had no idea that people were imprisoned in this fenced-in area like cattle. People had no idea. You wouldn't believe the number of people I've spoken to that until October 7th, they did not know that Palestinian people were being treated this way. So for a long time, this has been a particularly well-kept secret, unless you've been paying attention to international affairs. I mean, it's not in our history books. Think about it, folks. And we're going back to 1948 now. This is not in the history books, not in the history textbooks that I had in school. So they were able to keep this undercover. Now, because of the war, now they can't do that. So when you hear this statement from Joe Biden, which says to Netanyahu, Israel is losing support, something's got to give here. Why is Israel losing that support? Because the people are starting to wake up and say, okay, they're killing too many people. Okay, they told the people to move from the north to the south, but now they're bombing in the south too. Oh, wait, the people can't just leave the area at all? Oh, what the hell is going on here? Then you also see on the news, they're talking about the illegal settlements in the West Bank. the Palestinians being removed from their homes in the West Bank. So then people are like, wait a minute, you mean to tell me all this time there's this military force there and they have been actually kicking Palestinian people out of their homes? And this is still happening now? So the cat is out the bag. And I think for a lot of us that watch, we're like, well, yeah, of course everybody knows about this, but they didn't. A lot of people didn't know this was happening. Just like a lot of people didn't know about those concentration camps. Let's continue.
You got all these answers and you have no solutions. What's your solution?
Justice. Stop killing people and give them back their land. That's it.
Okay.
And giving
Zionist playbook number 3. Okay. You're right about the population thing. Okay, I get it. All right. Oh, okay. You've been able to prove there's. Oh, okay. You say it's a genocide. Yada yada. What's the solution?
them back the land. It's going to be a much more complicated thing.
Who's going to lead your negotiations? Mahmoud Abbas, 88 years old?
I have no idea, man.
No,
I have no idea.
Yeah, that's the point, is you don't have an idea.
Well, when I say I have no idea, I'm being humble, because there's a million people who can do it, but like, I'm not a politician, I'm a comedian. I come here to tell some of my opinions, but the thing is, you want to put me, and you use that, and you give me, I'm sorry to say, butchered political information and numbers that doesn't say anything.
Stats are really butchered in political.
Yeah.
But it's interesting how you have all the solutions for Israel, but you have no solutions for Gaza or Hamas. Very interesting.
Because the people in Gaza are not in power, Adam. They don't control any of the resources. Gaza does not have a military. Israel controls the land, the air, the water, the food that comes into Gaza. They control whether or not people can exit Gaza just to get treatment at a hospital in Israel. This is the dumbest thing I ever. It's just stupid. And that's like looking back and saying, okay, it seems like all the solutions that you have are for the slave owners and not the slaves. It's clown shit.
Very interesting how you can critique everything that's going on in Israel. Yes, they do have some things they need to rectify. Just like the United States, just like any democracy. You've got all the answers there, boss. When I said, what do they do over here in Gaza? What do they do? I have no idea. I'm just a comedian. Don't listen to me. So which one is it? You either know your shit or you're actually...
So what was your question? What's the solution for Israel?
So what's the solution
I said the Israel
for
take
Gaza?
back the land. For Gaza, how about you stop the killing and then we can talk?
Okay, so let's say we do that.
Okay.
So here's what I believe. I think we need to demilitarize Gaza. We need to de-radicalize, because they're the leading.
How are you going to de-radicalize? How do you do that?
Maybe let's stop.
So how about
let's stop summer schools where they teach about jihad and they start playing football.
So you want to demilitarize Gaza, but Israel is allowed to remain militarized? Hells no. That's like taking all the guns from the American people, but the police still have guns. Would you be okay with that, folks? Would you be okay if the U.S. government came in and said, that's it, we're taking everybody guns away. Doesn't matter if you're a registered gun owner or not, but from now on, the only people who are going to carry guns in this country are the cops. Hells no.
How about the religious schools in Israel that actually tell people that we should kill all Arabs? And these videos are
you know all those Jews that are running around bombing everywhere around the world? No, it doesn't fucking exist.
Oh,
it's
really?
only in Islam.
Oh, really? But what about the Jews killing the Palestinians inside?
I'm talking about around the world. If I said there was
we're bad people. We're bad people. Take us out.
That's not what I'm saying.
No, we're very hot.
Okay, what I'm saying is they need to.
Religion. We are a terrorist religion. Take it out.
You said it. Your words.
Let's do it.
You said it. Your words.
Yeah.
Your words.
Let's do it. I mean, like
your words.
This is like you have a really interesting outlook for people who look like me. You look at me and I'm Muslim, and you have all of these assumptions about me being a terrorist, while Islam is not a terrorist.
You said the words, Bassett. I didn't say those words.
You know what's the difference between Islam and terrorists? They go on like some rogue groups and they kill and they do shitty stuff. But you have like a whole country with a whole military arsenal who is committing terrorism every single day, backed up by the US.
There's your Israel talking.
Yeah. I'm going to talk it. That's my opinion. That's my opinion.
Totally.
See, part of the Zionist playbook is to basically say that Israel was doing nothing wrong. That's basically what it is. You notice they never admit to any type of fault, anything that Israel has done wrong.
Cool.
My opinion.
Totally cool. Yeah. It's all good. But you're trying to tell me that Islam doesn't have a terrorist problem?
Islam, Muslims have a terrorist problem.
Correct.
It's like when you say Islam has a Muslim problem, when you say Judaism has a Muslim problem. All right, a lot of Muslims are assholes, and they're doing horrible stuff. And I do not feel the need to defend those people because those people don't represent me. The thing is,
if Jews were running around all over the world blowing themselves up as suicide bombers, as a Jew, I'd be like, guys, what the fuck are we doing here? What are we?
No, you wouldn't. You would find a way to defend it, just like you're finding a way to defend the state of Israel right now. Get out of here with that.
What are we doing here?
Okay.
This is accomplishing nothing.
So let's
but here's the reality. Jews aren't doing that, and Christians aren't doing that.
Jews are not.
Let me ask you a question.
They're not doing that in Gaza. They're not doing that in the West Bank.
Everything you talk about is.
I'm sorry, I got to debunk something here. Notice he made a mistake here. He threw in Christians. How many times have you heard about stories where Christians, more so extremists, have done those things? Whether it's abortion clinics, whether it's cult-like organizations that are Christian. There was a whole Waco, okay? The only reason I even know that Waco, Texas existed, there was a whole damn cult of people that followed this man who said he was Jesus. His name was David. They followed this guy to this compound in Waco, and they were so convinced this guy was Jesus, they poisoned their own damn kids. So I don't know if Christian was a good one to bring in there, Adam. You might have maybe wanted to leave that one out.
Gaza, I'm talking about the world.
What's happening
You're
right now.
so obsessed with this one topic.
I am.
I'm trying to understand the world.
There.
Okay,
because my family lives there.
But my family's in Israel.
Really?
So only your family counts. My family doesn't count.
No. Okay, but like, did your family live in an open air prison and being killed every day?
The open air prison, the genocide. Get them.
You see how you
get them new talking points. You see how open air prison.
No, his family is not in an open air prison. His family is allowed to move freely as they want to. That's the point that Bassam's trying to make to him. Your family, Adam's family has no restriction. He can walk about freely. For Palestinian people, it is not that way. Even for Palestinians that are Jews, by the way, they have restrictions too.
Only talking point.
Israel left Gaza in 2006.
It didn't leave. It left and it put it under blockade.
It's called a disengagement. Why do they have a blockade? Maybe because they're shooting missiles hundreds of times a day. Yeah, I'd pretty much put a country in a blockade if they were shooting missiles every single day.
You cut them from the sea, cut them from the water. It's like, okay, go live. How do you do that?
Let's move on.
They weren't shooting any missiles in 1948 during the Nakba. Hamas didn't even exist. So what's the excuse there? Adam, what's the excuse? Let's think about this for a second. What's the excuse for what's happening in the West Bank? Hamas isn't in the West Bank. What's the excuse there, Adam, when the UN has declared that those settlements are illegal? What's the excuse?
From Israel, because I know you're hyper obsessed with it. Why?
I'm not hyper obsessed. You keep asking me about Israel.
No, I ask you about the world, and I'm asking you about Christianity and Muslims and Judaism. You want to focus on Israel. Why can Muslims move to any Christian country they want, but Christians and Jews can move to 0 Muslim countries? Why is that?
What the hell is he? This was the dumbest. Oh my God. That is such... I know, trauma queen. This is the dumbest statement. I think, one of the dumb statements he made.
What about Dubai? What about
I'll ask it again.
What about all of these countries? What are you talking about?
You mean the country?
You're just mentioning Qatar and Dubai and all of there's like a lot of expats living there.
So the middle, this is my point, and I'm glad you're catching on.
Yeah.
That I'm not racist. I'm pointing out.
Well, there are Christian countries who like shit. I wouldn't use that because of the economy.
I'm pointing out that in certain Muslim countries, they're getting it right. Or at least attempting to.
Good for them.
Okay?
Yeah.
Yes, good for them. Good for Qatar. Good for UAE. Good for Saudi and what MBS is doing. Good for them. They're examples of what could be done. Gaza, if they took the billions of government of international aid, could be Dubai, but they decided to make a terror state. So the question that I'm asking is,
are you saying that there's so many money coming in and just like Hamas used it in order to make weapons?
There's people of Hamas who are literal billionaires living in Qatar. war, flying around on private jets. How do you explain that?
They're horrible people, and I don't condone them. All right.
Okay.
I'm talking about the millions of people in Gaza.
But horrible people, Hamas. Let's not talk about that. We'll move on. But Israel,
First of all, Americans, and in reference to expats, Americans live all over the world. Do you guys know that? All over the world. Australia, Singapore, Saudi Arabia, Egypt. In fact, one of my former classmates lived in Egypt for a couple of years. Americans live all over the world. What the hell is Adam talking about?
Let me give you a dissertation over here.
Like I'm
trying to give you
you're
some.
just like shouting over me.
I'm
just
not
to make
because every time I'm talking,
you are basically
talk.
going around all of the stuff that's happening with Muslim people that is bad, and then basically what you're doing is you are undertoning. You are trying to find an excuse to keep that killing in Gaza continue because Muslims are bad, Muslims are terrorists, Muslims are poor. So let's just like kill those people in Gaza.
You are
this is exactly
so
what you're doing.
intellectually lazy. It's comical. Because I'm not even talking about Gaza.
You keep insulting me.
We're
keep
gonna
insulting me
wrap up. Because I'm trying.
I could say like you are a motherfucking racist. You know, like how would you
what
feel
have I
if
said that's
that?
racist? I'm saying that there's
that you say about racists, the way that you speak about Muslims, that we are terrorists and we are horrible people. Basically, you're telling people that we deserve to die. And Israel has everything.
Adam has had a couple of dog whistles during this conversation. And this is only a small part of the conversation, but the full conversation is, I think, almost 2.5 hours long. But I'm just saying, like, he's had some dog whistles coming out of here.
Thing to do in order to kill those people. Anyways, if
I said zero of those words.
Hopefully, if
you were putting all those words in my mouth, I said zero of those words.
If my wife's cousin, who's a doctor, get killed tomorrow, I'm gonna send you a postcard.
So if my actual cousin gets killed in Israel, that's okay.
They will not, because you know what? They are safe because he's not living in an open air prison.
Oh, why are they safe? Maybe because they have the Israeli Defense Force, the Iron Dome that stops all the missiles.
They don't have that.
Yeah, but
they don't have that.
Maybe you should have built that instead of tunnels.
With what?
With all the billions of foreign aid that was given.
So now he's saying that it's the Palestinians' fault. They should have built something like an Iron Dome. Okay, Adam, let's just sit back here and pretend like the U.S. government doesn't fund the Iron Dome. Let's sit back and pretend that the U.S. government doesn't give Israel $3.8 billion a year. The reality is all that money didn't come just from the Israeli economy. A lot of that money came from the United States.
What billion foreign aid are you? These
how much money does Iran give? How much money does Qatar give? How much does the international community?
Actually trickled through Israel. You understand that Israel is actually holding
your
that
argument holds no weight because all you're doing is defending Hamas. You have zero argument.
I'm the last one to defend Hamas, by the way, and I've actually said the terrorist group, and I'm a big fan of Hamas. But I'm just giving you some facts. Every single money that goes into Gaza goes through Israel. As a matter of fact, Biden has a big problem with Netanyahu because he's withholding the tax money that paid by the Palestinian people to the Palestinian Authority, and Netanyahu is holding it back. Have you heard about that? Have you read about that? Just 2 days ago, if you're reading your stuff, but you don't. But the thing is, Netanyahu is holding back the tax money from the Palestinian in West Bank, and he's not giving it to
You're so funny, man. You're so funny.
No, you're just
saying
so ignorant.
You're saying all the money that's going to Hamas is coming through Israel? Sure.
Filtered through Israel.
Sure. All the money.
Israel controls the air, the land, and the sea. That's the point that Bassem is trying to make. Things just don't come into Gaza. Israel has to okay for something to go into Gaza. They don't let them bring in chocolate. They don't let them bring in chocolate. Like it's absurd.
Through Israel.
Yeah, all the money from Iran going right through Israel. Sure, that's likely. All the money from Qatar.
By Netanyahu in 2019, the Likud party telling them that he is actually overlooking the amount of money coming from Qatar, and he is doing that in order to split the Palestinian Authority. Listen to me.
I'm familiar with this. I'm not disagreeing.
How about you? Listen, educate yourself about that.
I'm not disagreeing that Netanyahu has done some fucked up things.
Here it is.
Okay.
Here it is. Oh my God. Here it is.
Biden is in frustrating call told Bibi to solve Palestinian tax revenue issue.
Because Israel is withholding the taxes. You understand every single money transaction.
That's your argument right there?
That's part of the argument. Every single money transaction, whether it's taxes, whether aids, it has to go through the Israeli government.
So all the money that Iran is funding Hamas, you're saying that goes through Israel? Is that what you're saying?
Hamas was funded by Israel, you big dummy. This guy is like, he's like I don't know, like a dime store Ben Affleck. Like, that's what I feel like I'm looking at and listening to right now. You had to remember, Israel created Hamas. They were funding them. It just, and he just leaves this out. It's easy to mention Iran. Everybody knows that. But tell the people something that they don't know, Adam. I mean, I'm looking at him and I'm getting Gone Baby Girl vibes or something. Gone Girl Gone? What is it? Gone Girl? The baby girl is gone? Whatever.
Through Qatar, through Israel.
Okay, that's so false. It's so flagrantly false.
I want you to educate yourself more.
Okay, I will. I'll go read up on this. But if you mean to tell me that Israel is intercepting the money that Iran is sending to Hamas and says, yeah, we'll send it to you guys, believe me, they're not doing it.
By the way, it's 11:15. It's 11:15. We're going to wrap up. Here's what I will say. I'm going to be very honest with both of you guys. I mean, I've been listening to both of you guys, and I love this. I love this. Let me tell you why. The average American right now is sitting there. There's a group that agrees with you. There's a group that agrees with you.
I don't know how he was able to be quiet for the majority of that conversation. And that's not the entire conversation, but that's one of the parts that I think is really important for people to see. Thank you, Will. Gone Girl. Yes, Gone Girl is the movie. And then there's another one, I think, with the other Affleck. There's another one with Casey Affleck called Gone Baby Gone or something like that. I don't know. Anyway, it is what it is. Crazy conversation there. But I just want to show you for yourself so you can just see it for yourself. I mean, how more blatant do they have to be for people like Adam to really get it? Listen to this. This is Netanyahu.
For 30 years, I am very consistent, and I'm saying something very simple. This conflict is not on the lack of a state of Palestinian, but the existence of a state, the Jewish state. Every area that we evacuate, we receive terrible terror against that. It happened in South Lebanon, in Gaza, and also Judea and Samaria, which we did it. And therefore, I clarify that in any other arrangement, in the future, the state of Israel have to control on the entire area from the river to the sea.
You hear this? This is Netanyahu publicly stating that Israel will have control of the entire area from the river to the sea. Now, all of a sudden, it's okay to use the phrase from the river to the sea. It's okay for Israel to say it. It's not okay for the Palestinian people to say it. I don't know how much more blatant they have to be to prove to people what is the intention. And people will still sit back and say to you, there's no plan for ethnic cleansing. Motherfucker, do you have eyes? Boy, I tell you. JB says great value, Ben Affleck. Oh, let me stop. Let's go to the comments here. Thank you for the super chat, Yessie. I'm so over the Zionist rhetoric. Thank you for the super chat, Peen Aquam. Sabby, first, I love your show and heard you mention the American Indians, but the mainstream media hasn't. That is what I meant. That genocide still happens on our Indian reservations today. I hear you. Let's take the comment on Rockfin, Corey. Oh, man. Thank you for the tip on Rockfin, K. Karim. In the early days of the creation of Israel, Zionist terrorist groups bombed Jewish communities in Arab capitals. The goal was to create fear and force Jewish population flight to Israel. Thank you so much for that. If you have not had a chance to do so, ladies and gentlemen, go ahead and smash that like button. That helps me with the algo. If you are new, don't forget to like, sub, and share. We're going to end on a positive note tonight. It is really cold where I am. It was 18 degrees this morning in the Boston area of Massachusetts. There's still snow on the ground. Part of it is turned to ice. Slipping and sliding. But for those of you who don't have as much ice, a friend of mine taught me something when I lived in North Carolina. I had never heard of this before. She used to make this thing called snow cream. Now, in North Carolina, you have to understand it doesn't snow as much, especially along the eastern part of North Carolina. So when we did have like a snow day, they would make a big deal of it. Everything shuts down. The schools are closed, the stores are closed, and you just stay inside because they don't have enough equipment to plow the roads, etc. They're just not used to getting it, right? So she told me if there's a snow day, you're supposed to make snow cream. Now, nobody in the Northeast that I've mentioned this to has ever heard of this, and I had never heard of it either until I met her. But apparently, it has been making the rounds. You can see it here with a TikTok video I'm going to show you. Apparently, when you make this snow cream, it tastes like Chick-fil-A ice cream. Now, here's the thing. I don't know about you, but I don't really feel comfortable putting snow in my mouth because things happen in that snow. Creepy crawlers go through that snow. Dogs walk through that snow. Dogs pee in that snow. There's also the fat furry friends in the city that live in the sewers that go through that snow. So I just personally don't feel comfortable putting some snow in my mouth. But if you're interested, check out Snow Cream. I should explain what this is, right? I think that's the condensed milk. I think what she put in before the condensed milk, I think that was vanilla extract.
Oh, you understand, little Maggie.
Just gonna cut the half and half. You stir it up really good. And there's your snow cream. So that's what it looks like, you guys. Now, she swears it tastes like Chick-fil-A ice cream. But like I said, I'm not putting no snow off the ground in my mouth. Some people take a big bowl and just put it outside and let the snow just accumulate in the bowl. Not doing that either. Like I said, you don't know what? Touch that snow or touch that bowl before you go to pick it up the next day. But that's just me. Snow cream. Learn something new every day. All right, guys, that is it for me tonight. I am heading out. I'll be back tomorrow night. Marcel Dixon will be here. He is running against Jim Clyburn. He has some things to say about Clyburn. Should be an interesting discussion, and we'll also cover news. Other than that, guys, have a good night. Keep up the fight.